Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome, happy warriors, to the Rabbi Daniel Lapin Show, where I, your rabbi, reveal how the world really works. And there are two areas in which it's particularly easy to see how the world really works. And I've always said those two areas are raising children and running a business. And if you don't know what you're doing in either of those two situations, you're not going to raise children, you're going to raise monsters, and you'll let them loose on society. And if you don't know what you're doing in running a business, well, the alternative is pretty obvious. But actually, there is a third category as well. And the third category, where you really need to know what you're doing and you really need to understand how the world really works, is the area of running a society, running a country. And for the longest time, probably maybe as long as 10 years, I've constantly been joking with Susan that we need to get a home in Hungary. She would constantly laugh at me and, why Hungary? And I pretended that her family background is from Hungary, which it isn't. I wish it was. And I just constantly think we need to go to Hungary. Well, about, actually it was last February, I had the opportunity to be in Washington, and I had the great pleasure of meeting Ambassador Szabolcs Takács from the ambassador to the United States from Hungary. And I chatted with him then for a while, and I said to him, if he would consider being on our show, we'd love to do that. He was very gracious about it, and we finally got on to making it happen now. So welcome, Ambassador, and thank you very much indeed for being on the Rabbi Daniel Lapin Show.
Thank you very much, Rabbi. It's my honor to talk to you, and I'm very grateful for having been addressed.
Well, I guess I should say at the outset, you're an ambassador, and that means you speak officially for Hungary. So I suppose I should really say that your being on the show does not mean you agree with my opinions at all.
Well, I mean, Rabbi, I think we agree on many different lines, and even if we don't agree, we can agree that we don't agree. But obviously, our job is to try to explain who we are and what is behind our narrative, why we are doing what we are doing. I'm quite convinced that having also followed your activity and your opinion about different walks of life, I think we pretty much agree on many, many different things, including how to raise children, just to refer back to your introduction.
And tell me about your family.
Well, I mean, I've got 4 children. They are back in Hungary. They are young adults studying there, but of course, we are meeting them quite often. At the same time, of course, for us, it was also very important to be at home for them, not to lose their roots, their identity. For us Hungarians, it's also very important to keep our identity, which is a long identity of 1100 years.
Yes.
So we have a long history to stretch back, but with my wife, we are happily representing our nation, our country in Washington, D.C., and in that context, I'm very happy to share some of our views with the audience.
I'm very, very pleased. And I had the honor of talking with your wife for a few minutes this morning, and I didn't realize that in addition to being the wife of the ambassador, she's also raising 4 children.
Yeah, absolutely. She is a warrior as well.
Sorry?
She is also a warrior that we refer to.
Yeah, right.
I mean, we say that the hand that rocks the cradle is the hand that rules the world, and we should always keep it in mind.
And that's very much the case. And that attitude is probably a little bit of why it is that I am so interested in Hungary and so eager to actually to visit. I really am eager to make that happen, and I will do that. But talking of children, the fertility crisis of the Western world has hit all countries very, very strongly. Even countries like Spain and Italy that you might have thought would have some Catholic foundation, France, Spain, Italy, none of them are managing to have children to replacement level. What is your understanding of Hungary, and what is the attitude towards children? When you walk in the streets of Budapest, do you see lots of kids around?
Yes, just answering your last question. When I'm walking in Budapest, thankfully, we see a lot of children running around. We see young families, young mothers and fathers with their children. At the same time, Of course, the negative trends in demography is also a problem in Hungary, although for the last 10, 15 years, I would say we have reached some remarkable achievements as a result of our very well thought over and very consistent policy. Now, why there are less children in countries like Spain or Italy that you mentioned, which traditionally have been very strong Catholic religious societies. I'm not a sociologist and I'm not a demography expert to tell you. I have my own opinion and my own experience. But somehow, following last couple of decades of our history in Europe and in the Western world, I can say that somehow with the emergence of welfare societies, better life, higher standards, people have somehow become more selfish because they don't want to share this wealth, the high standard of living with other people, including their potential children. So we have a lot of misperceptions about, these countries and countries like Ireland, Italy, Spain, but also many other countries. I really don't want to single out countries. We still believe that they are still strong societies where religion, God matters a lot, but apparently the case is not so because less and less children are born, and we have to find an answer. Why is that? Why people have decided to give up the centuries-old traditions of giving over the legacy from generation to generation, ador vador, as our friends in Israel say, from generation to generation, And the problem is that now Europe and the Western world, I think including the United States of America, is facing this huge challenge.
Yes.
Now, one of the answers to that, because of course, labor market needs people, and if people are not born, then you have to get people from somewhere. And that's why some believe that a encouraged and forced immigration, including illegal immigration, might be an answer. Now, our experience in Hungary is that this is not the case. This is not as black and white, that, just bringing in people, whoever they are, they will replace the missing children that are not born. And of course, it's also related to the very sensitive question of abortion rights, abortion regulation. I always recall a former US President, Ronald Reagan, one of our favorites, who said that I have noticed that those people who are speaking against or in favor of abortion have already been born. So, this is very indicative that how we look at the whole question. And in Hungary, we decided that making polls, of course, trying to get feedback from our society, and we realized that young Hungarians in large number, in fact, would like to have children and raise a family. But they had, of course, a lot of financial concerns about how they can manage and whether it will be enough for them to raise a family, buy a house. And we said that if this is the only problem, financial concerns, then don't worry, we can help. And that's why we introduced a new family policy in Hungary, giving a lot of allowances, a lot of incentives for young people. Please have children. If you want to have children, don't be afraid of financial concerns. And now, as we speak, if you are a mother with 3 children in Hungary, you are exempt from all taxes all your life. You don't pay any tax if you have 3 children. And if you are under 25, you don't have to pay taxes. We try to help people, and the policy works. Of course, it doesn't happen overnight, but for the last 15 years, we realized that the number of children are growing, the number of divorces are getting less, and the number of abortion cases are getting less. So it works, but we have to be patient and we have to be consistent. And that's why we need a strong support from the Hungarian society, which thankfully we have for the time being. And this is where we are trying to cooperate with our partners all over the world. So more than a nutshell, this is what I can say about Hungary's approach to demography and fertility.
May I give you my theory and ask you for your response?
Yes, please.
Looking at Israel, do you speak Hebrew actually? When you use those Hebrew words, your pronunciation was excellent.
Well, I don't speak Hebrew, unfortunately, but I have been working with the Jewish communities, Jewish organizations, also government level, for the last 15 years with Israel, with the Jewish community in the US, organizations all over Europe. At one point, I was the chair of the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance. It's an international organization.
I thought that. I wanted to come to that you served as the co-chair of the Holocaust Memorial Alliance, the Remembrance Alliance. Yeah,
that's right. Yeah, and I picked up some Hebrew. I know, of course, basic words like Toda Haba and Bavakasha and all these things. And I have one sentence in Hebrew which I usually boast with, but I can tell you, but I don't know. For the audience, well, I will tell you anyway.
Go for it. Yes,
I learned it from friends. He said there is one word that I know in Hebrew.
I want to drink some red wine from Ramat HaGolan, from the Golan Heights. Yeah,
that's right. I learned it from friends in Jerusalem, and when I was there, this is the only complete sentence in Hebrew that I remember, and I usually joking with that. Seriously, of course, we have a very strong and I think very fruitful cooperation with Israel as a country, with Jewish communities in Europe, in the United States and elsewhere, at the organizational level, at the individual level, because we believe that after what happened to our Jewish friends, our Jewish Hungarian compatriots in the 20th century, this is just the least that we have to do.
Well, I hope that you did, in fact, enjoy a glass of wine from one of the Israeli wineries.
Yes, I did. In fact, and from time to time, when I have the opportunity, I do.
It's such a remarkable thing to me because I've repeatedly read the description of the Holy Land from the middle of the 19th century, late 19th century, when the American writer Mark Twain visited. And like many other people during the 19th century, he describes a desolate, empty land where nothing grows. And now you go there now, and the country is filled with top-rate wineries.
Absolutely.
I'm not a wine expert myself, but it's remarkable how many places are producing what I'm told are good quality wines. It just is extraordinary. But anyway, back to Israel and demography. Israel is one of the only industrialized nations that has a fertility rate of well over replacement. And it's not just Muslims, it's Jewish Israelis as well. And it's not just religious Israelis, it's all Israelis. So looking at that and some of the other factors here in the United States of America, my theory is that economics and economic incentives is only a part of the problem. But the most important thing needed to get married and have children is a sense of optimism about the future. And the purest way to be optimistic about the future is through religion. And the reason I say that is because I think the default condition for human beings, if you don't raise your children to honor their parents, they won't. They'll go to a therapist and spend $200 an hour talking about how their parents ruined their lives. The natural default condition for people is not courage, but cowardice. And the natural default condition is pessimism, not optimism. And Judaism and Christianity particularly, I don't know much about other religions, do a great deal towards producing courage and optimism. And so I find in the United States that groups, both Christian and Jewish, who are devout and fervent in their faith, but are not economically secure, have big families. Many people who are secular have adequate and more than adequate financial resources. They do not get married and have children. Which brings me to what do you think of that? But secondly, my sense, not based on reliable data, I don't know, but my sense is that Christianity is enjoying a strong resurgence in Hungary right now. Any truth to that at all?
Yes, I mean, a very interesting thought, Rabbi, that you just outlined, and some reflections. And I think, the most basic question is if you have confidence in God, if you have a belief in God. And if you do, then you can only be optimistic, and you don't have to be afraid of the future, including having children, raising a family. And this is what we should tell our children in order, because you cannot force people, of course, to have children, but you can encourage them and you can dissolve their fear. And also at the government level, while of course we have to respect the privacy of people, the individual decisions, we can never create a perception that people feel that they are forced to have it, but they are encouraged and they are being helped. And this is good. I recall when my grandmother passed away some time ago, and she was a deeply religious person. She told me about having children, that don't be afraid of having children. If God gives you a land, then God will also give you pasture. So don't worry about that. You believe in that, and then things are settled. Now, of course, religion is a part of the Hungarian identity, and even politically today we identify as a Christian country. Of course, it doesn't mean that all Hungarians or the majority of Hungarians are regular churchgoers, but I would say that especially if I compare the rate in Hungary to other countries in the West, I think we are still in a better position, or it could be even better now. Of course, church and state are separated in Hungary, as it should be in a modern political society. But the church is also enjoying a lot of attention from the state, all kinds of churches, including Judaism and Jewish faith. And I'm very proud to say that Hungary can also be identified as a country based on Judeo-Christian traditions, identity, and history. Because the first Hungarian king, already in the 10th century, he converted the previously pagan Hungarians to Christianity. So the first Hungarian king was a strong Christian Catholic leader, Saint Stephen. Every year on the 20th of August, we celebrate the birth of Hungary. We celebrate the legacy of King Stephen, the first Hungarian king. And the last Hungarian king in the beginning of the 20th century, who was from the Habsburg dynasty, King Charles IV was also a very strong Catholic leader. So I think Christianity, and not only Catholicism, but also Protestantism, very much defined the Hungarian DNA, the Hungarian identity. Of course, the 20th century totalitarian regimes, this internationalism of communism, originally coming from the West, and then, of course, putting a dark shadow on Hungary from the East, the Soviet communism, they wanted to destroy everything. They wanted to cancel our culture. They wanted to cancel our history, our identity, and they were very fervently attacking the family. They were fervently attacking church, and of course, priests were persecuted, and they were put in jail. They were tortured. They were killed. And 50 years of totalitarian communism tried to kill religion in Hungary. But I think now there is a renaissance of religion in Hungary. And this is what we are fighting for also in Europe, when we are trying to define Europe. I recall about 10, 15 years ago, leaders of the European Union wanted to draw a constitution of the European Union. And some wanted to refer to God in the preamble. And others were attacking that you cannot put God into the European constitution. Whereas in America, you are organizing prayer breakfasts and you refer to God every day, and in God you trust. I think this is what we have to get back in Europe, and we Hungarians trying to convince our friends that we have to make Europe great again. This is our job, and by the way, currently we are holding the presidency of the European Union, and this is our motto, make Europe great again. And of course, everybody immediately relates it to the slogan of the American conservative who have just very dominantly won the elections. But in fact, we have to make Europe great again. And making Europe great again also is trying to respect our roots, our identity, the legacy that our parents, our grandparents have left on us everywhere in Europe. So this is what we are working for every day.
I've always said that Jews have lived for longer, more safely, and more prosperously in the United States of America than anywhere in the last 2,000 years. I am certain that this is not in spite of America being a Christian country, but because it is a Christian country. And I've always said that America's Bible Belt is the Jews' safety belt. And sure enough, those parts of America that are least Christian have become most hostile. For instance, the American University campus. The American University campus got rid of Christianity by about 1960, and today campuses are the locus of anti-Semitism. In Hungary, I may be wrong on this, but does the Prime Minister identify as a Christian?
Yes, the Prime Minister identifies as a Christian, a Protestant Christian. His wife is Roman Catholic, so it's very,
well, that's hugely influential. If the leader of a country is comfortable identifying religiously, that's tremendous.
Yes, and at the same time, I think that he is the most philo-Semitic prime minister Hungary has ever had in our history. And this is also very important, very indicative. I recall a couple of years ago, when there was a case in one of the European countries where they wanted to completely ban and terminate kosher slaughter. And the Jewish community in the given country turned to the courts, and the court ruled against them. And then they took it to the European Court of Justice.
Excuse me, Ambassador, just 1 second. I just want to explain to the audience what you're alluding to. Folks, I've often spoken about it. I eat meat. I eat only kosher meat. And there are several requirements for meat to be kosher. But one of them is that it has to be slaughtered in accordance with Jewish law, and there is there is a trained person who acts as a slaughterer, is known as a shochet, and it is done by means of a very special super sharp knife. What has happened in a number of European countries is that whether it's animal rights activists or people of similar outlook, there's been an attempt in a number of countries to ban and to make all animal slaughter uniform. And the ambassador is just talking about the attempt when the court ruled against the Jewish community and in accordance with the law that prohibited Jewish ritual slaughter kosher meat.
Yes, thank you very much for the clarification, Rabbi. And this is the case. But if you ban kosher slaughter and you cannot eat the meat as a result of the kosher procedure, then the message to you is that you are not welcome to live in that country. And, at the time, the president of the Jewish agency, Isaac Herzog, who is currently the president of the State of Israel, he wrote an open letter to Prime Minister Viktor Orban and asking him that you are our last hope, because we know that you take religion, identity, traditions, culture seriously. Not only Christian, but also Jewish culture in Europe. And the Prime Minister also answered in an open letter that as long as he's in government, he himself and his colleagues will do utmost to defend Jewish culture, Jewish life, Jewish identity in Europe. And in other European countries, they wanted to completely terminate and ban circumcision.
Yes, that's correct.
If they do that, then they ban Jewish life. So I think they are really completely irresponsible and they don't care about people having a tradition. Now, I'm very happy to say that in Hungary, this is not the case. In Hungary, I'm very proud to say that there is a renaissance of Jewish life in a community sense, in cultural sense, in religious sense. In many countries in the world, synagogues are being protected by police against attacks. Now in Hungary, we are building synagogues. We are not destroying it. We are renovating synagogues. And I would say that if you are a Jewish person, you can really live very freely, live your Jewish identity. And, we have been attacked for the last 30 years by the radical left and radical liberals that we are anti-Semitic, which was the case. And the current Prime Minister of Israel, Bibi Netanyahu, when he visited Budapest, it was in 2017. First of all, I think a politician like Bibi Netanyahu never visits a country which is anti-Semitic, number one. Yes. But when he was there, the Prime Minister of Hungary, Viktor Orban, said in a press statement that, Mr. Prime Minister, I can assure you that it can never happen again in Hungary that the state does not defend her own citizens like it happened during the Shoah, during the Holocaust. It can never happen. We lost 600,000 Hungarians in the Holocaust. And we are not saying we lost 600,000 Jews. We say we lost 600,000 Hungarians. And the former president of Hungary, when he visited Auschwitz-Birkenau, he called it the largest Hungarian cemetery in the world. And this is how we have to look at that. And yes, there was Nazi occupation in Hungary, and the Nazis wanted to terminate the Hungarian Jewish community, and there were Hungarians at the time, individuals, and also that time Hungarian state that collaborated with the Nazis. That the way how we look at that today is that those Hungarians who collaborated with the Nazis in the 90s, they did not only commit genocides, but they also committed high treason. They were traitors. They betrayed their own country because they had their own camp to be terminated, to be sent to the death camps. Now, after that, for 50 years, there was radio silence because another dictatorship, another totalitarian regime, communist regime, ruled Hungary for 50 years. So we had the chance to be, again, free and independent to decide on our fate only after the changes in Europe at the end of the 1990s. But for the last 35 years, we Hungarians, we have been enjoying freedom and sovereignty, and we very much appreciate those politicians in the world who are speaking in favor of identity, culture, nation, sovereignty. And if a country cannot defend her own borders, then this is not a sovereign country. And it's no wonder that the Prime Minister of Hungary is on a very good friendship, both with the Prime Minister of Israel and also the recently re-elected American president.
Yeah. So is kosher slaughtering permitted or at the moment not permitted in Hungary?
It's absolutely permitted. And there are rabbis which can do that. And by the way, of course, we are trying to encourage Jewish life.
Look, Ambassador, I'm just making sure that when I come, I'm going to be able to get a kosher hamburger. That's all I'm checking into.
You can get it in Budapest, and I can give you some recommendations of some very good kosher restaurants in Budapest as well. And I think this is one of the highlights, by the way, if you are a tourist. And if you visit Budapest, and this is, a country of 1100 years. So we have a lot of cultural heritage in architecture, in high culture, in classical music, in fine arts. But also the Jewish Quarter in Budapest is a very famous tourist destination, even if you're not Jewish. The largest synagogue in Central Europe is in Budapest. And we have beautifully renovated synagogues. And of course, there are many, many Jewish families all over the world with a Hungarian root. Here in the United States, in California, in Florida, in New Jersey, in New York, many, many people with a Hungarian background. Also in Israel, there are about 200,000 Israelis with a Hungarian family background. And of course, many of them have very dark memories about Hungary because of the Holocaust. Yeah. But things have completely changed now. And I'm really, again, very proud to say that Hungary is now not only a safe haven, but also a place to be if you are a Jewish person. And the Jewish Hungarians are good Hungarians. They love their country. They love their identity. And they can freely live their religion, and we just have to encourage them and the future.
Back to demography for just a moment. Years ago, noticing the population decline, Angela Merkel of Germany decided that a really good way of solving the problem of how do you keep the factories of BMW and Mercedes open with declining population, and she thought, why don't we bring in a few million young men from the Middle East and North Africa? And it's not hard for anybody who visits Germany to see how that's been working out for them. One of the most interesting things to me is during the height of the immigration period, Syria, North Africa, Hungary kept its borders intact. And I do not understand how you managed to do that. I know that it brought the hatred of the left-leaning West down on your heads, but if you are part of the Schengen Agreement and you're part of the European Economic Union, and they decree that you have to open your borders to, quote, refugees, how did Hungary avoid the situation? Because from what I understand now, the kind of unpleasant rioting and street protests that are being perpetrated by out-of-control Muslim youth in many of the cities in Europe, this does not happen in Hungary at all. Explain to me what's going on.
Rabbi, I mean, you touched upon a very hot spot, and I think the root of many of our problems currently. Now, let me answer your question in different ways, and maybe starting what you just referred to at the end. This is extremely threatening. This is extremely concerning what is happening in many Western European great cities with a great history. Just recently, what happened in Amsterdam when Jewish youngsters, football or soccer fans, were being chased in the streets. I think the Prime Minister of Israel compared it to the Kristallnacht in Germany during the Shoah. I mean, this is unacceptable. And it's also unacceptable what is happening in many parts of the Western world, including the US, what is happening at your universities. This blatant anti-Semitism. Now, on immigration, and certainly this is not my job to defend Angela Merkel, but first of all, we have to say that Hungary is interested in a stable and strong and economically and socially developing Germany. The Germans had a very difficult and very hard legacy on their shoulder after what happened during the Second World War.
Yeah.
They had to come back from there. And of course, there is still this blame on Germany, and the Germans had to live their life since the end of the Second World War, trying to compensate. And I don't need to analyze now, and we don't need to analyze, we don't have time to analyze why Merkel said what she said. But of course, from a German chancellor, turning a blind eye to refugees would have been a mistake. But the problem is that they were not refugees. And Angela Merkel was naive, in a sense. And when she said that everybody is welcome, and all Syrians are welcome, then everybody threw away their passports and they said, I'm Syrian, I just can come to Germany. Yeah. And this was a huge mistake because neither the society nor the German economy was prepared to absorb these people, especially because many of them, I'm not saying all of them, there are many decent people probably, regardless whether they come legally or illegally, they would like to have a better life. And they don't have bad intentions. But there is a huge number of people who do have bad intentions. Sometimes they are radical terrorists, and they are going to all these European countries with one intention: to destroy and to kill. We have a history of terrorism. 2015, you remember the Bataclan in Paris, you remember what happened in some Christmas markets in Germany or in Copenhagen against the synagogue, or in Nice in France. So there's a problem in Europe with that. And I think now there has been an enormous political pressure on Hungary since 2015, since the accentuation of this immigration crisis, to open up our borders. Now, first of all, you are right, we are a member of the Schengen area, and we are a border country. And being a member of the Schengen area also entails very strong legal obligations to defend the border. And we defend the border, and we don't let anyone illegally. There was, of course, an exception 30 years ago. We were not member of the EU then, when there was the civil war in Yugoslavia, our imminent neighbor. And now there's a huge war in Ukraine for the last 2.5 years. I can tell you that Hungary as a nation, as a state, as a country, we opened up our borders to refugees. Because if they are coming from Ukraine, or they were coming from Yugoslavia 30 years ago, they were obviously refugees, mostly women and children and elderly. Let me tell you, Rabbi, also that for the last 2.5 years, more than 1.5 million Ukrainian refugees have come to Hungary. We are a country of 10 million. So it doesn't mean, some people say that we are pro-Russian and pro-Putin and all that. We are not. We would like to see an end to this conflict, but that's a different negotiation or discussion.
Ambassador, you put your finger on one thing very important when you said that the women and children. There was an early colony in America called the Roanoke colony in Virginia, which vanished. It failed. Whereas the colony in New England prospered and became the United States of America. And one of the reasons, I believe, for the failure of the Roanoke colony is it was only men. And one of the huge mistakes, in my opinion, that Germany made, and for that matter, so did Sweden and Norway, is they admitted huge numbers of young males. There were no women, there were no families, there were no children. And that's not a refugee condition, and that is a recipe for disaster. Single men are what George Gilder called social dynamite.
Yes, we have been punished politically for that. For the last 10 years, we have been being criticized on that. And now even the European Union is withholding European funds that Hungary should get, because we don't want to join this immigration deal. As a matter of fact, when we joined the European Union, there was neither a legal nor a political obligation to open up our borders without vetting people, without looking who they are coming. And this is a mistaken policy of the European Union, and now everybody is paying a price. And there is no wonder that more and more conservative right-wing political parties and politicians, political stakeholders are getting stronger and stronger in more and more European countries. I can see it will come, and there will be a change, but we need a complete policy change in the European Union, just as much as there was a complete policy change in America 2 weeks ago or 10 days ago, when the majority of the Americans, with an overwhelming dominance, produced the greatest political comeback in American history. And I think one of the reasons was, of course, this mistaken policy on the borders, although this is not my job to evaluate what is happening in America. I'm an envoy, I'm just watching, I don't evaluate. Although, of course, we have made it clear very, very obviously who are our political allies in the United States.
The hatred in the left liberal establishment, the people who hated Brexit in England, and the similar crowd in France and elsewhere in Europe, and in the United States, the people who hated Donald Trump are exactly the same people who do not like Prime Minister Orban.
Yeah, absolutely.
And for much of the same reasons.
Absolutely. That's the reason why they don't like him, because he has emerged as a strong political leader, not only as a Prime Minister of Hungary, but one of the leaders of the European Conservative. They have just formed a political party over the weekend in Paris, the Patriots of Europe. We have members from France, from Italy, from Hungary, from a variety of countries in Europe, and they are now the third largest group in the European Parliament. And hopefully, these people are speaking for patriotism. And the international globalists and left have always said that, no, the conservatives cannot cooperate internationally because they are conservatives and they are only dealing with their own country. As a matter of fact, the challenges are very similar, not only illegal immigration and the lack of border protection, but also this radical, what we call the woke policy, that they wanted to penetrate into the mindset of our children in schools, in education, completely misinterpreted genderism. In Hungary, everybody respects women. Everybody respects that there is a difference between gender. But in Hungary, we identify two biological genders, a male and a female. And it's in the Hungarian constitution that in a family, the father is a man and the mother is a woman. It doesn't mean that we are anti-LGBT. I mean, there are LGBT people as well in Hungary. And in the Hungarian laws and regulations, there is every guarantee to secure that nobody can attack anyone in Hungary who belongs to a minority, sexual minority, ethnic minority, religious minority. So we defend them. We defend this lifestyle. But the difference between us and the radical left is that they were promoting this lifestyle. And if we were not promoting, then they immediately called us undemocratic. The problem is that in the otherwise wonderful story of the European Union, because the story of the European Union is a wonderful 20th century story. It's a success story of the 20th century. But what has become now of the European Union is too bad. It's very indicative that the British decided to leave. I was dealing with Brexit before I came to the United States, and
yes,
much involved in what happened in the UK. But the problem is that in Europe, what I experienced, that if we don't agree with the mainstream liberal radical left, then they immediately call you undemocratic and everything else, and authoritarian and this and that.
During the Obama administration in America from 2008 to 2012, and then during the Biden administration from 2020 to 2024, part of American foreign policy has been the promotion of the LGBTQ agenda, to the point of forcing American embassies around the world to celebrate these lifestyles and these activities. The Africans resented it very strongly. They made no secret of it. Throughout Europe, it's also been promoted. Has Hungary felt any of the pressure from international organizations such as the EU and the United States? Have you felt the pressure from outside to somehow buy into a specific anti-traditional family agenda?
Absolutely. And this is a very disappointing story. We have felt this pressure big time. In fact, when the Hungarian parliament decided to adopt a law that protects children at school, minors, against any propaganda of different civil society and NGOs without any legitimacy, and we say that until the age of 18, when the children are adults, nobody should be allowed into school, except, of course, for the teachers and for the educators. And they immediately called it an anti-LGBT law. They call it a children protection law. They immediately associated it with that. It's not against the LGBT community. It's against common sense. It's against traditions. The schools should be places where children are being taught about all the subjects that they would need in their future and in their life, including their history, their mother tongue, sciences and arts and everything. And when they are adult, they can decide how they live their life. And this is not against anybody. This is for the protection of the children. But just because of this law, all kinds of globalist international organizations and of course the European institutions and political stakeholders, the left in Europe, the left in America, attacked Hungary big time and politically. So we had to certainly just hold against this pressure. But, we have been around for 1100 years and we would like to be around for another 1100 years at least. So we need to be very consistent and very straightforward to defend our interests. But we Hungarians, we don't want trouble with anyone. We are respectful wherever we can. We just want to have the similar respect from other countries whenever we decide on our fate, on our own future. And this is part of that story.
When communism took over Hungary in 1945?
Yes, it happened in 1945 and then 1947.
And then in 1989, it ended.
That's right.
How do you think it is, or why do you think it is that Hungary seemed to recover so quickly from nearly 50 years of communist oppression? It's almost, I'm not going to put words in your mouth, but from the outside, it's almost as if there was an inner Hungarian spirit that was waiting to burst out of that oppressive shell.
Yes, I think if I want to identify ourselves, we are very unique, of course. We are a nation that identity is somewhat obscure. We are coming from Asia, the early Hungarians, 9th century.
And is that the Magyars?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. They were tribes in Central Asia, and that's why we feel some historic brotherhood, some historic relations, family relations with many Asian nations, including in Central Asia and beyond, even as far away as Korea or Japan. And we have a very respectful policy at the government level towards them. But Hungarians, when they settled, they converted into Christianity and they started to develop. And the backbone of our identity is our language. We are Hungarian because we speak Hungarian, not ethnically. It's a very diverse society and a very strong and rich society genetically. And there has always been a will to survive. As we say, we speak a language that nobody understands. It's not even a language, it's a secret code of communication. Only Hungarians understand Hungarians, and this is something that unites us. And we had to fight, invaders, the Mongolian Tatars in the 13th century, the Ottoman Turks in the, when was it? It was the 16th, 17th century, 150 years. And then we had communism, we had Nazism, we had a lot of things that we had to fight, but the Hungarians whose early ancestors occupied the territory where we are still there. And 50 years of communism is just a short period of time in this historical perspective. And at family level, at individual level, we tried to keep our traditions, including religion, of course, the language and the community. So that's why we were happy when we could shrug off communism. And Hungarians did a lot. In 1956, just 10 years after the end of the Second World War, young Hungarians revolted against the mightiest military force, the Soviet Red Army, and they were crushed. But as we look at that, 1956 and the revolution was the first nail in the coffin of communism. It was followed by 1968 in Prague, 1981 in Poland, and eventually when the Hungarians opened up their borders to the East Germans, and we contributed big time to the unification, the reunification of Germany.
Yes.
This was the end of communism. And this is a legacy, this is part of our identity. And I think we have enjoyed freedom and independence 35 years, but now we see a lot of challenges, and this forced wokeism, genderism, this radical liberalism that was coming from the West was a huge menace to us. And that's why we are very happy that in America things might change. Whatever is happening in America has an immediate impact, not only on the allies in Europe, but all over the world. And that's why we very much look forward to working with America in the years to come. And I'm quite sure that we can make our countries great again.
I look forward to a close relationship between President Trump and Prime Minister Orban. I really do. I think it would be wonderful. And so if people encouraging people to go to Hungary, because I've been researching it for a little while. And it's not just Budapest. In the surrounding countryside, there are a lot of attractions. There are a lot of things to see. I myself, I'm into boating, so I definitely want to visit Lake Balaton. It's a huge freshwater lake.
This is a large freshwater lake in Central Europe. And yeah, thank you very much, Rabbi, so nicely promoting my country as an ambassador, as an envoy, of course. I'm also promoting tourism. But really, as I said, this is a country of 1100 years. And there is a very unique architectural beauty, a lot of high culture, including music, fine arts. Budapest as a capital is a very significant city in Europe. And there's a variety of tourist attractions. But if you visit the countryside, rural Hungary is also very attractive. People are hospitable. The food is great. We have winemaking traditions. So you can really enjoy some good days and some good weeks in Hungary. So not only yourself, I encourage the audience that they should make a decision and come to Hungary. And whenever they are in Hungary, they can also visit other countries in the region, of course. If you take this huge step and you visit it from America, then you would like to see as much as you can. But you can indulge in Hungary for weeks, and then you will not be disappointed.
Imagine if you choose the right time, there's probably a France-lit musical festival, perhaps.
Yeah, that's one of the choices, although there are day in and day out classic musical events in Budapest. We have a wonderful opera house where you can enjoy opera, but also for younger generations, all kinds of attractions in Hungary. And I strongly encourage people who have visited, usually they come back with a very good memory. And this is what I keep hearing.
And I also have a very romantic imagination of the Danube River.
Yeah.
I'm guessing the waterfront, the riverfront is beautiful and just a nice place to be at.
Absolutely. I can only confirm.
I look forward. Gosh, well, I really appreciate the time you've spent with me, Ambassador. I really do. I have been an enthusiast. I've looked at Hungary as the place that's been able to resist the pressure that has come from the left woke establishment, whether it's been in Europe, Great Britain, or most disturbingly from the United States itself. Definitely the impression I have is a country that knows its identity and is proud of its identity and is not ready to surrender it, not to anybody. And that fierce independence, which probably comes from your Magyar ancestors, is to me, very admirable. I love seeing it, and I take great inspiration and courage from how your country has withstood some of these very, very high-pressure indoctrinations. And I will just say that although the gentleman in the United States known as George Soros, although he claims to be a Jew, I couldn't be less proud of him as a Jew. I'd say that his value system owes zero to Judaism and everything to socialism, which I think has been a part of who he really is. I mention him only because he's been a vicious and unrelenting enemy of your prime minister and of everything your country has tried to do. I'm sad about it. I wish it weren't so, but I feel obliged to mention George Soros. He's done even more damage in the United States of America, which is now being turned back. People are rejecting the district attorneys and the prosecutors that he put into position in places like San Francisco, California, Pennsylvania, Illinois, New York, and other places. So we're seeing hope on the horizon, but he's a man who's done a lot of damage. He's of Hungarian background, and he seems to be particularly fixated on trying to undermine everything of value and permanence in Hungary. So I'm sorry about that, but I don't think I could do the show without making mention of him. So I will do that.
Well,
I don't
absolutely, Rabbi. I think we have to talk about that as well. And certainly this is very sad that what has been happening with him. But some reflections on Mr. Soros. And I can certainly confirm that he has been one of the greatest and the most ardent political enemy of the Hungarian Prime Minister and the Hungarian government. And very cynically, himself and the whole international left and liberals have been using this card of anti-Semitism when the whole issue came into the picture. And they claim that the Prime Minister of Hungary and the Hungarian government, in fact, and the majority of the Hungarians are anti-Semitic because they have a debate with George Soros. Now, I have very bad news for them. First of all, we don't list who is Jewish and who is not. I mean, it would be very bad. We know what happens when you start listing and what is the next step. Well, why would you list? I mean, Jewish people, as I told you, can live their identity very freely and very openly in Hungary, but we as a government, why would we list someone that he's Jewish or he's not Jewish? So we have nothing to do, Mr. Soros, coming from a Jewish family. We don't have any problem with him because of that. On the contrary, I must tell you, I myself and several members of the Hungarian government were ready to defend Mr. Soros. And I will be the first one to defend Mr. Soros if somebody attacks him because he claims he's coming from a Jewish family. You cannot attack someone because he's coming from a Jewish family. So it's absolutely nonsense and absurd. So the card that he's using against us is just, this whole anti-Semitism card. We have a problem with him because he, without any legitimacy in Hungary, he has never been elected by anyone. He's using illegal financial techniques to undermine the legitimately elected Hungarian government. And he's going against the will of the majority of the Hungarians. So he's getting involved through illegal techniques, politically and financially. This is the problem that we have with him. When I talk to a prominent American Jewish leader, I wouldn't name him because I don't have his consent on that, but he's a prominent Jewish leader from an organization. He told me, he's also coming from a Hungarian family, by the way. He said that Mr. Soros is zero Jewish because he's anti-Israel. And he has nothing to do with Judaism, as you said. He's rather a representative of the radical international liberals and globalists. It has nothing to do whether he is Jewish, Christian, or anything else. So I think this is an argument that he is using all the time, but I think it's absurd and it's nonsense. I mean, we don't know if he's Jewish or not. We have a problem with his policies and his approach, and I think that's a problem, not only in Hungary, but also in the US, as you said. He has made a lot of calamity here too.
When they strip religion out of Judaism by saying that the Bible is of no significance, they are left equating Judaism with international liberalism. And therefore, if you are hostile to international liberalism, as I am, then that makes you by definition an anti-Semite. Because if Judaism equals liberalism, then anti-liberalism must mean anti-Judaism. And that is exactly the technique that is used against many Hungarians and parts of the Hungarian government. Anyways, enough of him, and back to happy topics of Hungary, a beautiful country, place to visit, and I've enjoyed very much the opportunity to chat with you about this, and I hope we'll have further opportunities to do exactly the same. I appreciate your service to Hungary and your presence in the United States, and very much support the things that you're trying to do. So if I can ever be of any help, don't hesitate. And thank you again. I really appreciate this, Ambassador. Regards and appreciation to your wife for helping to arrange our meeting. And I wish you success and good health in the year ahead.
Thank you very much, Rabbi. And I very much appreciate your interest, you reaching out. I wish you well, and I hope to continue this conversation, and my best regards to your audience and those people who were interested in this discussion. God bless you and wish you well.
Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Thank you, Rabbi. Goodbye. Bye-bye.